Thank you for joining me on the Who God Says podcast. I am your host and Kingdom Ambassador, Tyshaundra. Hi, hi, hi. Today we have a special guest. He is near to my heart because of the industry and the path he decided to take in life. He is a co-founder and videographer of Appian Media. Welcome, Mr. Craig Dehut. Welcome.
How are you?
I am well. I am excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you.
I
It's
am
always
very
great to talk to
excited.
other media professionals, right? And talk shop a bit.
Yep. I'm so excited. I was like, this morning, I got to get up and this morning. I've been looking forward to this.
Me
Definitely
too.
looking forward to it. So I want to ask you, where did you grow up? And when did you become a Christian?
Oh, great question. So my family and I are originally from Oregon. I was born in Salem, Oregon, on the West Coast, and I became a Christian pretty young when I was 12 years old,
Wow.
and that was due in large part to the influence of my parents. We grew up in a Christian home, familiar with the Bible and with Jesus, but decided to make that faith my own when I was 12 years old.
Wow. Yeah, that is early.
A
12 years old.
lot to learn starting at 12.
Yeah. Why did you make that decision at 12? Like what were you feeling to make that
Great
decision?
question. So it was a variety of things. I was always very interested in the word, and like I said, taught it from a young age. But when I was 10 years old, I was actually diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Oh wow.
And it's a lot for a young person to deal with. Many children, in fact, get diagnosed younger than that.
Wow.
Um, and it prompted me to ask questions that usually we don't have to ask ourselves until until we're older. Questions like, what's going to happen to me after I die?
Yeah.
Questions like, um, why would a good God allow something like this to happen?
Mhm.
Questions like, does God know or does he care when human beings suffer? And great questions. Everyone needs to answer those questions. And after working through that for a couple of years, and I'm thankful to attribute that and the helpful, wise answers I received from my
Wow.
parents, um, made the decision that I do believe in God, and I do believe that through Jesus we have a hope of life after death, and so I don't have to fear death anymore. Um, and he gives us a confidence and a comfort, not necessarily to remove every trial, because
Hmm.
he doesn't,
Nope.
but to be with us in trials. And I wanted that confidence. I wanted that presence, um, and that shift that occurs. Diabetes is something I struggle with, but everyone has something,
Yeah.
um, and everyone has something that makes them question the goodness of God, the purpose of God, the plans of God, and to be able to read the Bible and hear the good news of the gospel, and to know that He does offer life after death. He offers comfort in the midst of trials. He offers us grace and forgiveness of sins and purpose. He gives us a reason for living and wanting to live, not just hope that something great will happen after, but purpose for living now.
Right.
I wanted all of those things. So that's in large part why I chose to become a Christian at 12.
That is beautiful. Thank God for mom and dad. That's
Absolutely.
beautiful. Wow. You are very inquisitive, very young.
Yep. And sometimes that's served me, and sometimes that's not. But I think with questions like that, everyone needs to ask them, and everyone needs to go to the source of wisdom and truth, which is God's word,
Yep.
to get those answers. We shouldn't be afraid to ask the questions. God
Yeah.
gives us the answers.
That's amazing. So you grew up in Oregon.
Yes. So around 12 or 13, my family then moved to Indiana, believe it or not. So my father is a preacher and has been for decades now. Um,
Okay.
and due to a preaching position he took in southern Indiana, we then moved and have mostly, I won't bore you with all the details, but mostly spent the last 25 years in and around the Midwest. Um, I did live a couple of years in Atlanta, Georgia, which is where I went to film school. Um, but have found my way back to Indiana. That's where my family and I live now, and
Oh.
um, which has been great. To get different experiences and see what life is like in different parts of the country, and to interact and engage with Christians. There's a large group of Christianity in this part of the country, which is such an encouragement, and that's been good for us. So
That's awesome. I was going to ask you, how was your experience in Atlanta when you went through film school? If
yeah.
you can
Oh,
sum up that experience, what would that be like?
sum it up. When I moved to Atlanta, I probably knew maybe 5 people in the whole state. Um, and the confidence that my parents had in me to let me go and do that is still astounding to me. Um, Thankfully, the people I did know and the people that I became aware of and grew close to while I was there um, helped make that time beneficial to me in many ways. I went to film school, like I said, and studied for 2 years. Got a degree in digital video production. Um, and the schooling was helpful. It was taught by industry professionals. They knew their craft well, taught it well. But on the whole, the majority of the instructors did not have a faith in God.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were even antagonistic towards Christianity. And so it was this juggling act that I had to do, where I wanted the instruction from them. I wanted to learn from them because
Mm-hmm.
they were incredibly good at their craft. But at the same time, I was regularly having to defend my faith to them. And again, there's purpose in the midst of trials. It's difficult and was difficult, some of those conversations, but it was actually really, really good. Every Christian should be ready and able to defend the faith that they have. Always ready to give a defense for the hope that is within you. And as hard as that was, I'm so thankful that for those 2 years I had to do that. I did certainly find some good churches to attend while I was there, and good Christians to be around, um, to help and encourage and support me during that time, and was regularly talking with my parents, who were living in Louisville, Kentucky at the time. Um, so I don't know that I would trade it. I'm glad to have done it. 2 years was about all that I could take of that. Um, and decided to, just based on the experience, the knowledge that I had to that point, go out and try and find work, and try to gather more experience by doing and working with others. So that's what I chose to do back in 2007.
Oh wow. Okay. That was I was walking with you through that whole summing.
Oh, good.
I was,
I don't know
I
if
was
it's if that was a summary. It did feel
yeah,
long.
I was walking with you. But I like that you said you had to defend your faith. I
Yes.
think sometimes people get it misconstrued that we're not defending God because God doesn't need our defense.
Right.
We're defending our faith. We're showing our belief. It's not I have to defend God so you can believe in God. It's That's not what it is. God is our defender.
Yeah.
We're not his defender. So we
Right.
defend
I like
our
that
belief.
distinction. Yes. Um, he's proven himself,
Yeah.
and he's done it since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
He doesn't need some mere human to convince the world that he exists. He does that by Like all you have to do is step outside and look at creation, and God
Yep.
says, "Here I am." Like
Yep.
open your eyes. But you're right. I absolutely appreciate that. That distinction is my faith in Him. I need to be able to explain to people why I have chosen to put my trust in Him and to obey Him.
Yep.
Um, and it's good. Sometimes we aren't challenged or pushed enough. And we ought to be, because if truth is truth, it
Mhm.
should be able to withstand any kind of challenge.
Yeah.
And so we shouldn't shy away from it. Um, we should prepare ourselves for it. And that's what I attempted to do, not flawlessly by any means while I was in school, or flawlessly now that I'm an adult. But we should always be willing to continue to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what has if you can kind of give us a little picture of what your walk has been with God so far, how would you describe that?
Ooh, what my walk with God has been. Um, it has been a blessing. It has brought um, clarity in so many instances where without it, I think it would just be confusion.
Hmm.
Um, I am not going to lie and say life has been a breeze since I became a Christian at 12 years old, because that's not the truth. It wasn't true for Job. It wasn't true for Jesus himself. And so I shouldn't expect any different. But what I can say is I have not found anything that mankind can offer that provides the same level of security and peace and truth. And I've tested quite a few of them, and continued to be open to listen to what the world offers. But time and time again, when you stack it up to what God offers and the truth that He reveals in His Word, it doesn't compare.
Don't
Um,
measure up.
and I have seen, even fairly recently, I mentioned my mother earlier. My mother passed away back in November and was
Oh,
a dedicated and faithful Christian to the day that she died. I have seen enough death now
praise God.
from both sides. I've
Mhm.
seen those that died in the Lord with a faith and a surety, and the fundamental different experience that is than those that I have seen pass who have no hope,
Yeah.
who have chosen to reject the hope offered by God. Um, and it's just I've seen the power of the gospel change people in such fundamental ways that I've seen nothing else on earth change. My father is a good example of that. That's probably a podcast in and of itself, but the life that he was living prior to becoming a Christian, which he openly and commonly, frequently, communicates to people, was one of worldliness, pursuing the things that the world is
Hmm.
after, and the gospel changed him into someone totally, totally different.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so I've seen its power, and so um, I'm not perfect, far from it. I still, am challenged every day to be the kind of person I'm supposed to be. Um, but I'm thankful for someone higher and better and more holy than I am,
Yeah.
to push me to a higher standard, to forgive me when I fail, and to challenge me every day, to seek Him and seek His Word. Um, that's how I would describe my walk, um, and I'm thankful for it. Still working at it at 39 years old now. I'm excited to see
Amazing.
what God can do.
Amazing. Yeah, that forgiveness is something else. Whew. What would we
What
do
would we do?
without it?
What would we do without it? Right?
What would we
Um,
do? Oh, child.
yeah.
What would we do? I can tell you some things. But what would we do about that without that forgiveness? That's something I think a lot of people take for granted. It's one of the smallest things, but it's huge.
Yeah.
And it's like we all take that for granted.
Yeah.
Because if you think about how hard it is for you to forgive Just you forgiving the person that cut you off in traffic.
Right.
Right. So where
Right.
would we be if we was God? Oh God.
Right. Yeah.
Come on.
If we forgave, and may probably put that in quotes, if we
Mm-hmm.
forgave,
Mm-hmm.
you know, ourselves the way that, or if God were to forgive us the way that we typically forgive other people, it would not be,
It would not be
um,
good.
it would not be good. It would not be good. And so, yeah, counting on that, relying on that, not using that then as an excuse to say, well, I can just live however I want, because God forgives. Well, no, he calls me to be better. He calls me to
Yes.
learn from my mistakes and not repeat them. Um, but he's so patient and so kind, to pick us up and dust us off and say, okay, try again, try again.
He's
And
the
I'm
most
thankful for that.
patient father I've ever seen.
Right. Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
I would say parent because my patience, oh Lord, I pray constantly. And not just because it says so in the Bible, because it helps. I pray
Oh,
all
yeah.
day long, all day. When somebody says something I know in the instant I can snap, I just like, I pray all day long.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it helps.
Mm-hmm.
It helps with self control and it helps with accountability. Definitely helps.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
I want to ask, why did you want to get into film school and become a videographer? Like what led to that path?
Good question. So it was twofold. Even as a teenager, I was drawn to creative things. I liked to draw. I liked to write stories. Eventually developed a liking towards photography. And then someone let our family borrow an old camcorder. And I'm old enough to say it wasn't digital. We weren't shooting on our phones. It was 8 millimeter tape. It was a camcorder. Um, I think if you were to turn that into a digital image, you're probably talking about 360 by 240. Like that's what we were shooting on. And we just had a blast. We would go out. I've got now 6 siblings. We would go out in the backyard and we would shoot movies, and they were ridiculous. They were so ridiculous. But I grew to love that. I loved when I finally realized that I could tell stories,
Yeah.
that I could write stories. Again, they started very inconsequential, very silly, typically our attempt at comedy. But before I was done with high school, I had started writing some of my own scripts, some short films, and some other things. And when I realized that, I would say, more powerful than just writing something down, more powerful than just drawing a picture, as much as I appreciate those and use those, to be able to tell a story with visuals and with sound, and to emote. You're using music and you're using acting and you're using creative storytelling, and I could kind of combine all of my favorite things and tell a story. And to tell a story that has a biblical emphasis and moral. I wanted, even at a young age, to create content that I wasn't seeing being created,
Wow.
which was biblically based stories that championed morals, that clearly communicated right and wrong and taught lessons. Maybe they weren't Bible stories necessarily, where we filmed a story about Abraham but they were stories where the heroes were really heroes, flawed, but learned to be better. And the villains were really villains. And we weren't supposed to, treat them as just victims who made bad choices,
Mm-hmm.
right and wrong, and God's sense of morality, that I knew I wasn't talented enough in those skill sets to tell the stories well,
Mm.
based on my limited experience of shooting videos in the backyard. And so I knew I needed to go somewhere and pursue that training. And so that's why I chose to go to film school in 2005.
Wow. That's a big dream and a big vision to have, from shooting home movies in the backyard with your siblings.
Starting and growing a business while dealing with your finances can be overwhelming and stressful. Emerald Services provides packages tailored to your business needs to help you mitigate taxes, stay compliant, plan for your future, and save money so you can focus on being the creative, influential visionary that delivers your dreams to the world. Because what you focus on is what will multiply. Schedule your discovery call today to find out ways Emerald Services can benefit your life plan and your business plan. Visit emeraldserve.com or call 504-603-6059.
Yeah, and it's changed shape. Over the years, I went to film school with a desire to be a writer and director of feature films. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be the Christian Steven Spielberg, and God has given me some different experiences along the way. I've worked in television news, which is a different type of storytelling, and have in the last 10 years or so settled on documentary filmmaking. And so you're capturing real stories, you're interviewing real people, and yes, you are structuring a story, but it's not a fictional narrative. I still think there's power in that. I still honestly would love to try and do that at some point in my career. But in the last 10 years have really leaned into the documentary form of this, and have found that's a very effective, compelling way to communicate biblical truth.
Wow. Whew. Little Craig filming in the backyard.
Those movies are around somewhere. I pulled most of them from the internet because, they're awful. They really are awful.
They were on the internet?
They were briefly. There are now, one Christmas many years ago, I put them all on DVD. Okay. And now my children, my nieces and nephews, all think it's hilarious to watch, their parents and aunts and uncles do ridiculous things in the backyard.
I would.
So they exist,
hilarious,
but are not readily accessible to the general public.
I would think it was hilarious. I would love to see that. We don't have any. I saw a picture of my mom when she was like 19, and I don't know where she found this picture from. And I was like, oh my God, we look so much alike.
Isn't that fun?
Like, I don't know who gave you this. Somebody sent it to her, and she was like, I don't know who that is. Like, oh my God, she looks so much like, well, I guess I look so much like her.
Yeah. So as embarrassing as some of those things are, the joy it is to then share them with my kids.
Yep.
And just to remember, like, we all started, in this way.
Yep.
We're all works in progress, and it should be that we can look back at ourselves 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in this instance, more than that, and go, hey, I have improved in these ways. God has helped me become a better person in these ways. I'd like to think I'm a significantly better filmmaker than I was at 13 years old with a Sony camcorder. And it's fun to remember.
Yep.
It's humbling to remember and to go back and go, okay, we've come a long way. Let's keep moving.
Keep moving. Yeah. How did you get started in your career as a videographer? How did that start?
Good question. Through spurts. Anyone who thinks they can go to film school and land, a job, their dream job at XYZ company right out of school is fooling themselves. It doesn't work that way. And so what I can say is I graduated in 2007 and worked at a coffee shop and did that through school and continued to do that after school. Found a part-time job in news. I had a small stint as an intern at the Weather Channel. There was a period of time, about a year, where I animated mobile games. I designed and illustrated and animated mobile games. I produced content for corporations and like testimonials for businesses. And I'm saying all of that to say it's a messy process. And
Mm-hmm.
most creatives will tell you that's exactly how it happened, where they did a little bit of this and a little bit of this. And eventually they found something that they loved doing, and the opportunity was finally, either they made the opportunity, which is what has happened now with Appian Media, or it was offered to them and they took hold of that. So I think the very first job I actually got paid for to create a video, I was still in high school.
Oh, wow.
I think I was 17, and there was a nonprofit that provides, or at least provided at the time, refurbished computers for low income families, which is
Okay.
such a cool thing at the
Yeah.
time. And so I made a series of instructional videos for them and got paid, I don't know, like $200. Um, and over time I've done different things, and so I still work, in addition to the work that I do at Appian Media. I still work as a freelance video producer, and so companies, a lot of non-for-profits, come to me and hire me to shoot video, to fly drones, and to edit content for them.
Wow.
um, will that be what I do 10 years from now? I'm not sure. If somebody wants me to make video games again, I don't know, maybe. Um, but my advice to creatives is always, don't get so fixated on your dream job
Mm-hmm.
that you forget typically you need to do all sorts of other things to get to that. So,
Yeah.
you know, you want to be a director? That's awesome. That's great. If you have the opportunity to be the person who brings coffee to the director on this short film over here, say yes. You want to be the DP, you want to handle the cameras, you want to be the guy who does all that lighting. Great. That's awesome. You need to be willing to haul cable
Yeah.
for as long as you need to. And I did that. There was a short film that I got an opportunity to help with, and my job was literally that. That's all I did, was I wound cable. And so I would follow behind the DP, and I would wind cable, and I would ask him questions. And
Mm.
he was very generous with his wisdom. I didn't get paid for it. I spent 3 days and worked 14-hour days. And those are some of the best things that a creative can do, is be willing to do the small jobs.
Yeah.
And then you'll be entrusted with the larger jobs. It's actually something that Jesus himself said, right?
Yep.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
sound.
Nice. Nice. I agree. Be willing to do the small things, the things that you feel like are beneath you, the yucky things,
Right.
the things that, oh no, I shouldn't do that. I think most of the time it's people don't think the level that they're trying to go, other people will take them seriously if they knew I'm getting coffee. Well, how can the coffee girl or the coffee guy be a director? They may think, well, they're not going to take me seriously if I get them coffee. You know, I think that's where most people get it. But the majority is you have to be willing to put in the work, lay the foundation, and work your
Mm-hmm.
way up. Sometimes it don't happen where you're sitting in a coffee shop and somebody walk up to you and say, "Hey, do you know how to work a camera?"
No. Yep. It's usually not. But they'll say, hey, this guy showed up on time every day
Mm-hmm.
and was there hauling cable and never complained.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that they're a hard worker. I can count on them to, okay, I'm going to give them a little bit more responsibility.
Yeah.
Um, so I did say all I did was haul cable. By the end of that shoot, and it was a little thing, but the DP said, hey, I need to move on to this next shot. Can you take these 2 lights and light that wall? It's going to save me some time.
Mm-hmm.
Very basic, like it was not a difficult task, but, and I was so intimidated, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to mess this up, and he's going to come and get frustrated, and I'm going to have to, but he entrusted me with, okay, light that sign on that wall.
Mm-hmm.
And when I come back in 45 minutes, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
And so, learning by doing, associating with people and recognizing that there are people who know more than you do,
Yes.
and ask them questions. Any creative who thinks that they now know everything there is to know about that particular subject, they're not going to go far. We should always be, and I'd say that's true not just for creatives, but for
It's for
anyone.
everything.
Consider yourself a learner,
Mm-hmm.
and good things will happen.
Yes. Yes. That's a big thing for me. I don't know about going to more school. That's what I call it. Like, I call it more school. Going to like graduate school and all of that. I don't know about that part, like sitting in the classroom learning, but I do love learning. I love to ask questions. I love to soak up other people's experiences. So I love to learn, and I love to learn about different things. I usually tell people all the time, if I can sit in a room and I can understand the conversation, oh, I'm hooked. So
Mhm.
I want to be able to understand the conversation in any room that I go into. I don't want anyone talking and it's going over my head. Now, unless you're talking in another language that I have no idea about, and then I'm still going to ask questions. So,
Sure.
but if we're speaking English, I don't want to be in a room and I'm not aware of anything going on in the conversation. I mean, an open conversation with everyone in the room.
Yeah.
I'm not saying a private conversation, but an open
Sure.
conversation.
Sure.
I don't want to be the person like, oh, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. But I don't want to ask because I don't want them to think that I'm ignorant. Like, there's so
Yeah.
much that we don't know. And the
Yes.
worst thing to do is to not know and stay quiet.
Yeah.
Find a time. They may not be able to answer your questions right there on the spot, but find a time to learn more. And in this day and age, it's so different than back in 2005. If you wanted to learn filmmaking, theory and get that experience, you had to go to film school like that. Those were your options.
Yep.
I'm glad to say now, which is crazy to think about now, almost 20 years later, there are numerous other ways for you to get that same education without taking out the massive amounts of debt that is required. And a lot of it can be done from the comfort of your own home.
Wow.
The University of YouTube. There are so many well put together tutorials about just about any topic, free to watch on YouTube. You just need to know where to look. And then learn by doing.
Yeah.
Go out there and make your first project knowing it's going to be awful, knowing you're probably going to be embarrassed by it before the thing is done, but do it anyway. And then the next one, you'll, based on what you learned and the mistakes you made, you'll do better. You'll do learn by doing.
Yep.
Grab other people and bring them on board. And it is something that I have found. So I graduated from film school. I don't even know if it's on my resume anymore, truthfully. One, I think the film school went belly up,
Oh, wow.
or at least that campus. No one cared when I left school where I went to school.
Wow.
No one asked. They did not care about my grades, even though I stressed about them. What they cared about was who I had worked with and what I had done. So show me your reel and tell me who you've worked with. And I found that true. It is more powerful to show a quality reel because I have now I work for myself. So it's been a while since I've sat in an interview and tried to get a job. But when I was doing that, there were some interviews I sat in on and they never even asked. They simply didn't care.
Wow.
I showed them my reel. I told them what projects I had worked on, what kind of experience I had, and that was enough for them to decide yes or no. So,
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I don't think I would. I mean, college is not for me. It wasn't for me. I did a tech school. I was licensed cosmetologist. And then I did Southern University in New Orleans. And I stayed there, almost finished my degree, but then I was like, oh, forget this. I just can't.
I get you. I get you.
I was like, oh my God. But you know what? It just wasn't for me. That wasn't it wasn't my way of getting to the places where God want me to be. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't my way. And I just had to accept that. I
Yeah.
didn't feel really down about it or anything. I just was like, okay, if this is not it, then what is it, God?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm in no way downplaying. Like, I know college has been beneficial for so many people, and there are some industries, the medical profession specifically, you need to go to school. Like, you got to do it. And I'm thankful for doctors. I'm
Yeah.
thankful that they spent that many years learning how not to mess up a human body when
Right.
they come in. But then there are some where the idea that everyone has to get a degree and everyone has to put themselves into such massive amounts of debt, otherwise they can't be successful. It simply isn't true anymore.
Yeah.
And I have friends of mine that never even attempted college and got job offers. In fact, I helped to teach some of them in an apprenticeship program I used to be involved in. It was amazing. This 20-year-old kid comes to me because he'd been offered 3 job offers
Wow.
after his apprenticeship. And he comes to me and he's like, so they're offering me, and he throws out this offer, $80,000 with
Wow.
full benefits, 401k, this kid's 20 years old. And at the time I was like, buddy, I've never even been offered something like that. Good for you. It had nothing to do with his degree.
Right.
It had to do with his experience and his work ethic and his drive. I mean, this kid was driven. And so there are some industries that do so require it, and I'm a big advocate of those. And then there are some where it's like, just learn by doing.
Yeah.
Apprenticeships or internships. And you would be surprised. Some of those people come out and they're making way more than any college graduate in their first few years. So,
Right. Absolutely right. How did you get started with Appian Media? How did you get started?
So Appian Media was born in 2015. Myself and another video producer, his name is Stuart Peck. He lives here in the Indianapolis area as well. He and I had just met, and we were sitting down at a coffee shop, kind of swapping stories, talking shop, but also sharing a similar concern that we were seeing, specifically about young people becoming disinterested in the biblical text. Kids were learning on their phones. They were using digital means in classrooms to learn, but we were at least seeing that they would come to church and they would learn in these classrooms, but those types of tools, those learning tools, digital tools, were not as commonly available in the Bible class.
Yeah.
Visual tools. And so, he was teaching a class at the time, some high schoolers, and was like, I'm going online and I'm trying to find a video of, I think it was Jerusalem or something. And he said, all I'm finding are either poorly made videos, like the quality is so bad or they're so old that I would rather just not even show them a video than show them this one because the kids think it's too cheesy and corny. Or he was finding videos that were well made, but were not teaching biblically sound things. He was having to give a lot of caveats like, well, okay, this is coming from this perspective, or this is actually very secular.
Yeah.
They don't believe that the Bible is a reliable historical source, but I want you to see Jerusalem. And he said, what would it take? How hard could it possibly be for us to go over, take a small team over to Israel and create something that was biblically accurate, that was visually engaging, professionally produced, and free? Because we were also finding that, yes, maybe we could find something biblically based, but we weren't sure because it was behind a paywall. And so could we create something that accomplished those 3 things: biblically accurate, visually engaging, and free? And so that's what we did. In early 2016, we launched a Kickstarter campaign. and raised enough money to take a team of about 7 of us, I think, to Israel in June of 2016, and we produced what we now call the first 5 episodes of Following the Messiah, where we traced from his birth to about halfway through his ministry the places where he lived and taught. And so we traveled to Jerusalem and Nazareth and Bethlehem, and we visited the Jordan River, and we made sure, due to our own experience and the types of things that were engaging, we wanted to take you in to the land. So not only explain the biblical story, but also show you the modern day culture and talk to the people who lived there and engage with some of them. So we do get on a boat and we go on the Sea of Galilee, and we talk to a fisherman who shows us how to cast a net, and from that time, the Lord has blessed us with donations. We are a non-for-profit, so people donate on the front end for us to create this content and then give it away for free. And we were able to finish Following the Messiah. So now it's a 10-episode series about the life and death and resurrection of Jesus. We produced a series called Searching for a King, which is the study of the first kings of Israel. So King Saul and David and Solomon. And that one, much more than some of the others, really leans into what kind of archaeological evidence do we have about the biblical story? Can we trust the biblical text, and specifically the story of David? We produced a series about the 7 churches of Revelation. So we went to Turkey and visited those 7 sites. And that was eye-opening and incredible. And then we just a few months ago actually released a series called Out of Egypt. And so we were able to visit Egypt and Jordan and tell the story of the Exodus and visit some of the places. There were a lot of places still kind of up to debate as far as where is Mount Sinai, where did they cross? But we know where the Nile is, and we know, approximately where they lived in Goshen. We pick a path, a potential path that they would have taken out of slavery in Egypt, take them all the way to Mount Nebo, looking into the land of Canaan. And we just recently released that. So we've done children's video series and numerous podcasts, and have been doing that now for about 8 years, almost 9 years, creating content that teachers can use in their classrooms, that parents can use with their kids, that students of the Bible, young and old, can watch these things so that when they get back into the text, they're excited about it again. They see these places in their minds in perhaps ways they hadn't seen before, and they let the power of the word do its work.
Oh my God. Absolutely amazing. Oh, I know you were scared when y'all started that Kickstarter campaign. I would have been. I was shaking like, oh my God.
Yeah. It was so unlike anything that had been done before. We are not the first people to ever make videos from the lands of the Bible. Like, people have been doing that for decades.
Yeah.
Nor were we the first nonprofit who was trying to create content and tools for teachers. But what we were trying to create, and the fact that we were planning to give it away for free, no one had done that.
Yeah. And
so how do you get the money? Because traveling to Israel is expensive, because hiring creatives, it's expensive work.
Yep.
The gear necessary, the permits necessary, the post-production time, the months and months and months it takes to edit the videos, it's expensive. And so we did. We asked for a lot in our minds that first year. We asked for $40,000 for that first trip, which was, we realize now, nowhere close to actually what we needed. And in a month, we raised 64.
Wow.
Hundreds of individuals came out and supported that. And we have found, as we've been doing this year after year, people are desperate for content like this.
Yeah.
And have supported it now in ways that still humble me and blow me away. These individuals that want to see this content made available, and we're thankful to them, and we're thankful to God for the opportunity.
Yes. Wow. Oof. Mm. Well, my pastor says, when God has his hand on it, it just flows. There's
Yeah.
no confusion. It just flows.
And that's been a prayer that we have prayed from the beginning. It was so different and it was so ambitious that we prayed. We really did, and we have throughout the years. Lord, if this is something that you want us to do, that you would grant it success, that you would help it move forward. And if this is something that you don't want us to do, we pray that you would shut this thing down quickly.
Yeah.
So we have in our minds, we want to travel to Israel on this date, and it makes sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
We have in our minds, we want to create this thing, and it makes sense to us. Maybe it even makes financial sense to us. But if it doesn't, if it's not what God wants, like, God, just shut it down. Like, don't string this thing along. That was shown to us during COVID. Actually, we were planning to go to Turkey and create the series about the 7 churches of Revelation, and we were planning to fly in May of 2020. And so I'm sure you can imagine why that very quickly became not possible, because the world shut down in 2020. And we said, okay, I mean, this is really obvious. It makes sense to us. We would like to do this, but clearly this isn't going to work.
Right.
And so the question was, is this God saying, don't do this at all? Is this God saying, wait and be patient? And interestingly enough, in just a handful of months, where most of the world was still shut down, they were not allowing international travel. Israel was not, Greece was not, but Turkey opened. And we realized there was a window in October of 2020 where we could try and do that. And so we did a lot of praying, and we sought counsel and advice, and we asked for more funds because, the funds were no longer what they were back in May.
Yeah.
And we're able to travel in October of that year. And it was a difficult flying with all of those restrictions. But once we arrived in Turkey, the country was empty, basically. We got access to some of these places that would have otherwise been packed full of tourists had we gone when we wanted to go. But instead we waited and ended up with something far better.
Yeah.
And that should be anyone's prayer is, Lord, this makes sense to me right now. Lord, this is what I want right now. But if it's not what you want, just shut it down, redirect me.
Yeah. I want to ask, what are some of your physical and spiritual challenges you've had in the film industry?
Ooh, great question. Physical and spiritual challenges. So contrary to what some people might say online, when we take production trips over to the Bible lands, we are not on vacation. These are hard. They're hard trips. They're wonderful. I'm glad to do them, but my wife can attest, when I return from these 2-week production trips, I am getting over jet lag. I'm typically ill for several days. It's hard. It's hard. And worth it. Like, I would do it again, and I have. The amount of walking that you're doing, the heat that you're usually working through, you're hauling, 40 to 50 pounds of gear. Sometimes we're climbing up mountains with gear. And it's challenging. The language barrier is challenging because I only know one language. I really ought to learn more. But sometimes there are cultural and language barriers over there. I will say, however, that one of the assumed challenges oftentimes is that the cultural differences make it difficult for us. We have found that even though the language is different and the cultures are different, that people over there are so welcoming and so usually very open to us. We've had complete strangers invite us onto their property to shoot video and offer us food. And So that's actually one of the things that people assume is a challenge, and typically we have found is not. People are very generous and open. Spiritually challenging, it's no secret that a large part of what we would call the Bible lands, a large part of the Middle East, hold to religious beliefs that are contrary to the Bible.
Yeah.
These are largely Islamic countries, and like I said, very friendly people, but we don't worship the same things. We don't believe the same things, and so there have been a few instances where, due to the nature of what we're creating, that they are not in support of allowing us access or offering us gear. And we simply need to find another way or another company to we've never been physically molested or persecuted in that way, but there's just some extra challenges that we have found due to the nature of what we're trying to do. And we believe it's worthwhile to overcome those challenges because the gospel is for everybody.
Yep.
They need it just as much as Americans over here need it, just as much as people who might believe something different need it. And so we're making it for them. And we believe that that's worthwhile. And then, spiritually, it just, it's good to work through your beliefs, and it's good to always be willing to examine why you believe what you believe.
Yeah.
And who is Jesus? Well, let's dig into that. Was he a real person? Because some people don't believe he was even real. Was he actually the Son of God? Was he Messiah? Well, let's study that. Let's dig into that. And I shouldn't be afraid to do that. And that's spiritually challenging, but it's good to do. It's essential to do.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad. I really am glad. I have more confidence now than ever that the Bible can be trusted.
Amazing.
Based on what we've been able to study and learn and do, I will put that biblical text up against any other and have confidence that that's God's inspired word. And that is due in large part to the push that we've had at times, the challenges that we've had to undergo. But that's been good for us, and it's been good for our faith.
Praise God. Yes, praise God. That is beautiful. I want to ask you if you could give advice to anyone who wants to get into the film industry or the entertainment industry, but they're like kind of apprehensive about being in Hollywood, especially
Sure.
those of us who are Christians and feel like, we have our principles that we want to keep and not compromise to say we're fulfilling a dream or even, I know a lot of times people get into the film industry because of money.
Oh, yeah.
So me in particular, I've always wanted to be an actress since I was a little girl. And one of my big concerns was I don't want to do anything that's compromising to who I am and what I believe. And I don't want to do anything just because the money may be attractive. What advice could you give someone who wants to go into that industry?
Sure. I love that you're mindful of that. It's so important to be mindful of that. If you have standards, I would even encourage people to write them down. Write them down. Don't just, I'm pretty sure that this is my line. Like, write them down. So that 4 years from now, you can remind yourself and go, okay, well, listen, I wasn't willing to do that back then. Why? So know where your lines are. Know what you're willing to do and not willing to do. And stick to that. And I wish I could tell you that the jobs will come in anyway and the money will come in anyway. No, frankly, the jobs may not. My experience was in Atlanta. I graduated from film school and I was offered some incredibly lucrative offers interesting things, money-wise, but not anything I felt comfortable producing as a Christian.
Yeah.
But what I would say to Christian creatives is, at the end of your life, God is not going to pull up your IMDb profile.
Good one.
It'll make no difference to God. But what he is going to do is he's going to ask you, why did you make the choices that you made? And was that in line with what I taught? And so maybe your IMDb profile, probably likely, will not be as long or as impressive. I am so thankful to say that, especially in the last 20 years, more and more opportunities are being offered to people of faith where we don't have to compromise.
Yeah.
Great, impressive productions are now being done they just weren't 20 years ago, but more and more people. TV shows and movies and documentaries where you can work on a film set and you can know, I'm not having to compromise.
Mm-hmm.
What they're trying to do is accomplishing good things, and it's well done now.
Yes.
Praise God, because 20 years ago, I couldn't think of many that I could point to and say, that was actually well produced.
Yeah.
I could say, man, their intentions sure were good. But now I can say, not only are their intentions good, but the end product is, I would hold that up against anything Hollywood would put out. In some cases now, I would say it's far better than most of what Hollywood has been barfing out recently. And so I would say, take heart, be encouraged. More opportunities are coming now than ever have.
Yeah.
And then I would also say this is, if you aren't finding the opportunities that you wished were there, seriously consider if maybe you are the one being called to do that. That's what Stuart and I had to ask ourselves. We started by complaining about the fact that this thing wasn't out there. And we could have very easily, probably by myself, that's all I would have done. It's just, yeah, it is really a shame. What a shame. But it was actually Stuart who said, why can't we do? How hard could it be? It was hard. It was hard. If only we knew. But he asked the right question. And he basically prompted us to, we could sit and complain about it. This opportunity isn't here and I wish it would be. Maybe it's because we are the ones to make that opportunity available. So stick to what you know is good and right, and stick to those morals, no matter what. Don't put a number on it.
Yes.
Take heart that the opportunities will come eventually. Be patient. And then also just consider that maybe you are the one to create the new opportunity, and then see what God does with that.
Yes. Thank you for that. I like that. Yeah. Great advice. Yes. Oof. I think we all get into situations where we're like, okay, but if I just had this one job, I can pay off some debts, I can pay some bills, and that'll help me get into the next position, and I won't do this again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very tempting and unfortunately very successful lie that Satan tells us.
Yep.
I'll do it, whatever it is, just this once. We rarely do that.
Yep.
And no goal, no mission, even if you think it's the right and good thing to accomplish, no good can be accomplished by doing wrong.
Yes.
And this is something we tell ourselves at Appian Media. We believe that what we're trying to do is good, and we can see the benefit of it. We're trying to help people fall in love with the biblical text, right?
Yeah.
Fall in love with God. But we can't do wrong in order to accomplish right. We can't. That's not how God operates. That is not how we should operate. And so you can't say, I'll accept this role or work on this project because eventually it will let me do the good thing that I like. No. If it's the good that God wants you to do, he'll create a path to get you there.
Yep.
And if the path is not created to get you there in a way that you know is true to his word, then it's probably not a path he wants you on. So you're hearing me kind of preach. Sorry about that. I do that on occasion.
It's okay.
I get pretty passionate about it. And I think it's important for us as Christians and as creatives to stand up for what we know is good and right, and stick to what God has said and not go above it or beyond it. And trust him and be patient with him. I wish I could tell you I've made these choices and I've been, flawlessly following my own advice throughout my career. It's not true. I have compromised and I shouldn't have. And I wish I could tell you that now that I don't compromise, here's a multi-million-dollar house that I'm in with a pool in the back. And that's not true either. But none of those things are what God promises us.
Yeah.
He doesn't promise us success. But I have seen in my life that if we value the things God values, the Psalms tell us that if we delight ourselves in the Lord, he will give us the desires of our heart. Mm-hmm. Which is to say that if we make God the desire of our heart, he will make sure we have it.
Yes.
And if we make other things the desires of our heart, God makes no promises. We likely will not end up with those either. So stick to it. Keep trying. I hope that God opens some doors for you. I think that would be great, even just for you to test it out and try it out and go, oh, this is fun. Or, hey, I'm glad to have done that. That was interesting. And, it's something I can show my kids later.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to. I just got an agent. So, hopefully I'll just be praying about it. I want to make sure, again, I'm making the right decisions. And the agent, I love her because she considers people as people and not numbers or money. And so that was the first thing I knew about her when I heard her speak. So, yeah, I'm excited, and I'm hoping I get to leave a little mark and I can say, hey, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to compromise at all. And my Nana used to say, once you get on a slide, you can't get off until you go all the way down.
That's sound advice.
What?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, what is she talking about? What? But she used to say it all the time. Once you get on this slide, you can't get off until you go all the way down. And I'm like, okay.
I like that. I've heard the train analogy. If you take that train all the way to its station, is that a destination you want to end up? Because right now the train seems like a fun ride, but where are you going? And that train's not going to stop until it reaches its destination. And is that where you want to end up?
Yeah.
But I like that. I like that slide, right?
Yeah. She used to always take us to the park, and my one thing she really stressed that she did not like liars. I don't like liars either, but I used to steal candy. And she knew, well, my grandmother used to give us Chico sticks, and they had coconut in it, and I'm allergic to coconut, and I didn't know. And so I would get upset because she would give all the kids 2 candies, a Chico stick and a peanut butter bar, and I would only get one. And I thought it was unfair. And so I would steal the Chico stick and get in trouble because I'm allergic to coconut, and they wouldn't know that I took the Chico stick. So, yeah. And my Nana used to tell me, once you get on that slide, you can't get off till you go all the way down. Yep.
Yeah. And that's just like God, right? He puts restrictions on us because he knows it'll hurt us. Mm-hmm. Don't eat that Chico stick because it'll hurt you, and you didn't realize. You just thought you were being denied something you wanted.
Yep.
But that's the nature of God. He loves us so much that he does put some restrictions on us and say, don't try that. don't go that way. Don't speak that way. Don't act that way. It's going to hurt you. And it'll probably end up hurting other people too. And let's not view that as, oh, God's holding me back. No, God's trying to keep me from getting hurt.
Yep.
And we need to love him for that.
Yes, we do. Yes. Well, I want to thank you for coming by and sharing with us, sharing your spirit and your time. Can you tell the people where they can connect with you?
Sure. So to view any of the content that we've created at Appian Media, you can just visit our website, appianmedia.org, or you can just Google that as well. We're on YouTube. All of the content that we have created is free to watch both on our website and on our YouTube channel. So you can just search for Appian Media. For me personally, my name is Craig Dehut, and it's weird, but if you Google my name, I'm the only one on the internet. So you'll find me, and you're welcome to reach out to me. I think that's beneficial to me until I become a international criminal or something, because then I'll be so easy to find. But for now, it's a great thing. You can just Google my name, and I'd love to connect. People can reach out, and as you could probably tell today, I love talking about this kind of stuff. I love sharing my faith, and I love encouraging people to use the talents that they have. Maybe it's filmmaking, maybe it's acting, maybe it's writing, whatever it is, to help spread the good news of the gospel and God's truth with the world. So happy to do it.
Amen. Oh my God. Thank you so much for coming by. Thank you for sharing with me. Oh, it was
glad
amazing.
to do it.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us today on the Who God Says podcast with your host and Kingdom Ambassador, Tyshaundra. Go to whogodsays.com to join the mailing list for episode premieres, upcoming guests, and more. Send in your questions to be a part of the show at whogodsays@gmail.com. And don't forget, join the Kingdom Fanatic community. Until next time, be blessed and also be a blessing.